Wonderful. And today I just have a couple of slides, and then really we will have just more of an interactive 40 to 45 minutes going through the TIDES ocean trash database that Ocean Conservancy manages, and really just chatting all things data today. So you have joined a volunteer cleanup data webinar, really focused on Ocean Conservancy's tools that we have to help support the international coastal cleanup and all of our fantastic partners like the two of you. So thanks again for being on. I'm Sarah, as you both know, and I'm the outreach manager for the ICC. I also help manage these data collection tools. So I know our team is growing quite rapidly, but if you ever do have questions about volunteer citizen science data collection or the tools that we have, I'm a good person to reach out to. Also, Truett Sparkman on our team. He's kind of my wingman with all things data, and he really knows the database inside and out as well. So if there's anything that comes up for you for your particular situation that you just want to work with us one-on-one, we're always here and happy to do that. And really our goal is to just make sure that we're counting as much of the effort as possible that happens each year during the International Coastal Cleanup season throughout the latter half of each year, and really trying to make it as easy and streamlined as possible for you, our cleanup partners, who are often managing cleanups throughout your whole country or maybe your province, your state, wherever it may be. We want to make sure that we create a lot of different options and ways for you to submit those data. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. We'll dive into TIDES. There's the URL there. I keep it bookmarked on my computer, but for many of you, you're probably only accessing this site a couple times a year. So no problem at all. We'll walk through how to sign up if you don't have an account. It's free and anyone can do so. And really just kind of walk through the basics. On this site, I kind of view it with two sides. There's the data entry side, and then there's the reporting side where you can go to find any data that may have been submitted through other routes, through either paper data cards that might have been mailed in to Ocean Conservancy. We enter all of these into the TIDES database, but then also the CleanSwell app that we host and manage, and that many of you in the network are adopting. All of those data go straight into this site. But we want to make sure that you have access to those numbers in your area, and really you can kind of pull reports from anywhere in the world. So it is an open access system. We'll talk more about that. But first, to kind of take a step back, we understand that you all collect data in a lot of different ways, right? You might have your own data card in place that you've been using for years with your organization. Many of you do cleanups year round, so maybe the ICC data card doesn't always work for you year round. That's understandable. We are open to accepting data in just about any format from any volunteer, beach, inland waterway, anywhere in the world, any cleanup that's happening with volunteers that they're removing trash from the environment. You are welcome to utilize the TIDES database and our tools to have those data safely stored year round and during the ICC season. So there's a lot of information on this slide, and I will send these slides around. Hopefully my Zoom box isn't covering up this information. Let me just make sure we don't have anyone in the waiting room. Okay, good. So here are just some of the scenarios that we've seen over the years with helping partners submit data for the ICC. All sorts of different routes here, lots of different options. Basically, it dwindles down to kind of three in my mind that I think of right away. First, if you aren't sure about the data entry, it's just one more system that you just don't want to deal with, or maybe you just don't have time, we totally get it. One of the first things you can do is just scan an email or take a photo of your data cards and send them to myself, to cleanup@oceanconservancy.org, and our team can handle the data entry for you. I guess the pros of that is that it gets off your plate quickly. The cons is that our team doesn't really know all the nuances of like exactly where the cleanups took place and some of that information. So we're not going to be as accurate in entering the data as you might be, since you or your cleanup captains are the ones actually there on the ground at the cleanup events. So kind of the pros and cons of that one. There's also a bulk import template that it's just like it's an Excel file basically that we create each year. And we've been really happy with this tool, especially if you manage a lot of sites, like maybe you have more than 10 of these volunteer data cards or of your own volunteer data cards. The Excel file might be a good route for you, especially if your organization is already storing your data in a spreadsheet like that. You can really just either send us your own spreadsheet, or we can give you this template and you can kind of bridge or kind of do some copying and pasting to fit your data into our upload template. Then all you have to do is send that data back to me or Truett, and we can bulk import all of those data for you. So instead of entering card by card over and over again, maybe if you have, like I said, more than 10 of these, it might get a little tedious and long. You can request that bulk import Excel file from us. And it just, again, hoping for efficiency on this one. So those are a couple of options. And then the last is just to enter the data yourself. Maybe your organization has a data entry person, or I know a lot of our partners have interns or volunteers that get really excited about where the data go after the cleanup events. And so TIDES has a way for you to create your own account and enter those data directly. And that's what I'll walk through today. The route of, if you have a mixture of volunteers who might be using the CleanSwell app, or maybe you don't even know and you discover today on TIDES that there are CleanSwell app entries in your area, that's great. And if you have paper data cards as well, one thing to note, just when you send those data to Ocean Conservancy, let us know if you know of volunteers that use the app for the cleanup that you're sending your data in for. So if hopefully that makes sense, but maybe you have like a summary data card from an event, but you know that 2 or 3 volunteers might have used the CleanSwell app as well. Just let us know, give us a quick note that you think there might be CleanSwell entries from this event. And then what our team will do, just to make sure that we don't have duplicate data entry going on, we go into TIDES, we look for your event, we zero in on the date and the location. And if we see any CleanSwell entries, what we'll do is we'll kind of subtract the totals that are already in the system, and we'll only add the totals on from your data card to make sure that they match. So there's a little bit of kind of this transition going on and this help with, when you do have a mixture of folks using paper versus the app, but it's definitely doable. A lot of partners, this is the scenario that they're working with. So what they'll do is they'll just send us their final data and let us know, hey, there might be some CleanSwell entries, and then we go in and kind of adjust accordingly. So we talked about some routes and some ways to get your data to Ocean Conservancy to make sure that it's contributing to whatever international coastal cleanup season it may be for, or maybe it's just year-round data that you want to store in TIDES. That's wonderful. Here again, I know there's a lot of information on this slide, and we'll give this to you in writing as well, but we've had a lot of newcomers to the International Coastal Cleanup Network. So I kind of wanted to start at the basics before we dive into TIDES. Really, if you're new to data collection, maybe your cleanups this year didn't quite get to the paper data card or even the app, but you do have some information from your cleanup event, and you want to know if it's enough to have it contribute to the database. Well, here are the basic requirements that we need for each unique cleanup event, right? Like each standalone event, in order to enter that event into TIDES. So obviously we need to know where the cleanup took place. That's probably the most important part, right? We want to attach these plastic pollution and marine debris data to the right spot on the globe of where that effort took place. Then we need to know the date of that cleanup, the number of volunteers, the total weight, or even just an estimate of the weight of debris removed, and then the distance, the linear distance covered. Again, an estimate is just fine for that. And the last two can get a little tricky. We know that if volunteers go out maybe on their own and they use the paper data card, oftentimes when we get them returned, they don't fill out the distance that they covered or the weight of debris because they don't have a scale with them, or they just don't know the distance. That's totally fine. You'll see we built in here some default metrics that you're welcome to use if you need help filling in the gaps on any of your data cards. And again, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Truett, and anyone else on our team, if you have questions about how to kind of fill in that citizen science data, the gaps that just inevitably take place when we're dealing with this amount of data in such a short amount of time, and having volunteers be the scientists for the day. So, and if you're curious about where we get some of these default numbers, like we roughly estimate, I think it's about 5 pounds per person, things like that. We really actually looked through the 35-year data set from the ICC. Like we look at the historic data to help inform roughly, if X number of volunteers go out, what's roughly the pounds or the kilos per person that is collected globally. So we did a little bit of analysis to try to get, a bit more accurate or scientific there when we're filling in the gaps of the data. But it is doable. So if you do just have some high level results from a cleanup that you want to share with us, feel free to just email us this information, and we'll go ahead and enter the data into TIDES for you. So TIDES is at coastalcleanupdata.org, as you see up here in the search bar. I would say that the internet can take a lot of bandwidth, right? So if internet is patchy for you, you're again welcome to send data to us to enter, or try other internet browsers besides Internet Explorer. We tend to have issues with Internet Explorer, but like you'll see, I'm on Chrome right now. So that tends to be a good internet browser for me. All right, and so on the home page, right away you see that this database is map-based. And if you have been with us for a while and have been doing the International Coastal Cleanup for some years now, you might recall an older database that we had that was more of like a folder system. If you're ever looking for those data, you want to kind of delve back into that system, that older archived database is right here, kind of towards the bottom of the home page. And here, I'll click on it and open it in a new tab and show you, it's pretty old, right? It's not being supported anymore. The developers don't put any effort into kind of maintaining it, but it stays as is and it's protected and all of those data are there. Don't try to log in if you're trying to find the historic data. Just click on guest access. It'll have you type in your name and email, and then it will send you into that older system. And this older system was developed in 2008. So this one holds data from about 2008 to 2015. That was when we first kind of went electronic and went interactive with a database that anyone could access and anyone could contribute to. Now, TIDES, we're really moving into the 21st century and utilizing the power of Google Maps to really make the site, I think, a lot better and a lot more efficient and just easier to navigate. And a note there, while I'm just mentioning historic data, if you are curious, well, what about data earlier than 2008? You're welcome to that data as well. They just live with Ocean Conservancy in Excel, like spreadsheets, essentially. So feel free to ping my team or myself if you are looking for running an analysis with data prior to 2008. We'll have to pull those data for you. So on the database, it's really tempting in the home screen to just start zooming in. Like you'll see, I'm using my mouse to kind of zoom in on that map there. And you see like a couple of reports pop up there. But what I recommend doing, especially you as cleanup organizers, I would go ahead and make an account if you don't already have one. You can click sign up in the top right corner. You're gonna need this account anyway if you're planning on entering data, because we need a way to reach out to you if we have questions about the data that you enter. But it's also just a good idea to have, because we learned when we first launched this system that there were some bots getting in the way, and we were a little bit nervous about the more detailed data reports kind of getting into the wrong hands, so to speak. So we created this little level of this little tiny barrier level of entry so that a human actually has to log in. So if you want to see more detailed reports, if you know you're planning on pulling like raw data from your area, I would go ahead and make an account, because otherwise those reports will be locked to you unless you're signed in. So you just see here, you fill out this basic information. When you create an account, you can see you can adjust your preferred units of measurement. And I'm not going to sign up because I already have an account. So I'll just go to the login option right next to sign up, and let me just log in really quickly here. Another common question that we get at this point in the stage is, or in the session is, well, if I have a CleanSwell app account, is that the same login on TIDES? No, they're not. I know it's a little confusing, but right now the two systems are pretty separate. Obviously, what happens on your CleanSwell app makes it into TIDES, but you can't really go into your app and like adjust or edit your cleanup data because all of that has to take place on TIDES. So it's a little confusing, but we have ways to edit the data once they're in TIDES. So don't worry about that. We get that question a lot too. You can always email us and we have administrative ability to go in and delete test entries, adjust CleanSwell entries and whatnot. But at the moment, CleanSwell users themselves don't have the ability to do that through the app. And so TIDES, it's a separate login. You'll need to create a different account. What I do is just have my CleanSwell and my TIDES login be the same. Just I use the same email address and I have the same password for both. So then I don't have any confusion. And first, I'm going to walk through how to enter the data. So maybe you just have like a handful of data cards like this, and you would like to enter them directly into the system yourself, which is fantastic. You can click on Enter Data in the top right corner here. Oops, I'm trying to scroll and I scrolled on the map. Or you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and either edit existing data if you have any, or just click Enter Data here. All right, and then it's going to prompt me right away to pick the location in the world where this cleanup took place. So again, I can scroll with my mouse. There's also this plus and minus, zoom in, zoom out button on the right side of the map. And I actually have this data card in front of me, so I'm going to use this as an example. I like to use this search bar because most of the data that I'm entering, I don't know where in the world these locations are. Let's see, I'm not spelling that park name right. Hewlett State Park. Let's see here. The beauty of citizen science data. Maybe it's Hewlett. It should come up if, okay, so I'm not exactly sure where this location is, but anyway, if it's available in Google Maps, it would show. You'll see I clicked on my mouse, so it already dropped a pin. Where are we? In Colombia. You can click anywhere else and the pin will move around. So for this example, yeah, let's go to Georgetown in Guyana and just do a fake entry here. So once you zoom into the location where your cleanup took place, roundabout, you can also go to satellite view. Sometimes I like to click on that on the map so that I can get a sense of, from a bird's eye view, where's the coastline, or where are, I know this team does a lot of cleanups in this mangrove area here. So you just get a better lay of the land before you kind of pick your spot or drop the pin. So I clicked there. It asks, is this where your cleanup took place? You can always cancel and, reselect. Once you feel good about the location where your cleanup took place, then that shrinks and you'll see you have a screen that's very similar to the volunteer or even the coordinator data card that you might have. And so you just kind of go in through on the screen and fill everything in. Pretty straightforward there. Group name, this is an interesting one where you can actually tag your cleanup event to your organization. Maybe it's Plastic Man Institute dash so-and-so beach, or Nature Trust New Brunswick. Maybe it's just an acronym, let's see, for your organization, and then you want to do kind of the location name from there, or maybe it's a group that you want to identify. If you have a corporate group, great to put their information in this group name. And I'll show you a little bit later why that's important, but essentially you'll be able to go into the reporting side of the database and search for any of these keywords that you put in group name. So it's important to just, maybe have a consistent tagging system if you want to track everything submitted from your organization, or, just make sure that you have spelling correct. It's not case sensitive, but this really is a cool field here that you can fill in with as much information as you want. I think it has a pretty long character limit. And then you can search for this entry later on. All right, the rest of this is pretty straightforward. You're just kind of selecting the information. I'm going to say that my cleanup took place on ICC Day. And I'll fill in Waste collected 5 pounds. You'll see my account, I have metric units selected, but you can adjust any of the units there. And you'll see the items that are required. And this harks back to what I showed in the slide about this is the bare minimum information that we need. All this stuff up top, most of this is what we're asking for in order to enter the data from any cleanup event. Switch that to miles. Number of bags is not required. People, we've got people, okay, good. And then usually on the front side of the data card, there is, for the ICC data card, that is an option where if you want to add weird finds, you'll see I've got a lot already in here. Let me move our box back over. You can add as many weird or unusual finds as you'd like to the cleanup entry. And then you'll get down here to the really the bread and butter and the really awesome data of the itemized data, the categories and the types of debris that were removed from that location. You'll see the order has changed. If you're used to the database and you've done data entry before, we did just have an update with the paper data card as well as the CleanSwell app. So they now match. The categories are exactly the same on the new data card and the CleanSwell app. And so this order of items is a reflection of the new data card so that you could go right down the list on your card and tab, tab, tab and enter this information like I'm doing now from a data card and hopefully do it in a timely manner. We apologize if you have the older version of the data card, which we are still working through those, just we didn't want to waste paper and a lot of partners were okay with using up the supply that they already have. The items are roughly the same. There are a few additional items that were added to the new card, but for the most part, a lot of these categories bridge over quite easily from the older version of the card to this new one. The thing that's going to be a little bit of a headache is that they're going to bounce around all over the screen and it might take a little bit longer to enter those data. So we apologize for that, but we appreciate your patience kind of as we transition between the two types of cards. And if you just don't want to deal with it and you did all old data cards this year, send them our way and our team can enter them for you. You'll see as I'm entering here, you don't have to put zeros in. If you did find, say, any appliances, you don't have to fill in every single field. You can just leave them blank. So that should help with the efficiency as well. Let's see here, this is like my pseudo entry. Other plastic waste can be marked here, especially if you have a paper card. Volunteers tend to write other items on the margins. So you can track those here and here with other like non-plastic waste, or down at the bottom, there are this category of other items not listed. And that's where if you have an item of particular local concern, maybe your volunteers find a lot of it, but it's not something that's reflective in the global data card that we all use as an ICC network. Enter those items here. So for example, yeah, like rubber pieces, that's a common one that some partners track that we don't track it globally. And we could talk at length about the strategy behind how we got to the card that we got to today. But in short, there is a place to add those additional items if you're tracking them. And there's a report to find this data as well. And then lastly, the entangled animals. I do want to talk about this for just one more minute. I know we're kind of halfway through the hour, so I'm checking my time here and making sure. Animals, you don't want to put just a number here. And we might need to be a little bit more explicit in the way that we're instructing volunteers to fill this out. What we're really looking for is the type of animal. So like a pelican, or maybe it's a bird, or whatever volunteers can do using their best judgment on if they did come across a deceased or they witnessed an entangled animal, we'd love to know about it. That's really helpful information. You can type in select the status of the animal that you saw, whether or not that animal was entangled. Really, it's helpful if they're entangled. You can still note if you found a deceased animal. Who knows, they likely have ingested debris, but we wouldn't know that right away. But if you could visibly see that they were entangled in something, this is where you'd want to track that information. So, and then the type of entanglement debris you'll see there is right here, but you could type more in that space. It's not like it's restricted to just one item. So that's how you fill in the entangled animals. And again, you can add more of those by just clicking that green add button. So when I feel set with my information from the card that I have or the entry, I click submit and finish. If I had more than one paper data card from that exact spot, you saw there's another button to submit and add another, and that would just take you to the entry screen again and have that pin be in the exact same spot. And then you'll see I've got this green bar at the top confirming that that data card was successfully saved into the TIDES database. And then it's prompting me to, okay, where's your next data card? And you do that process again until you have all your data entered. So that's the entry side. Let me see, I saw that we had a question here from Brittany. Some of our volunteers sometimes submit their data sheets with generic locations and no coordinates. Should we group these together and put the location as our office? That's a great question. We wouldn't expect volunteers to know GPS coordinates like longitude and latitude, but if they're not giving you any cleanup location at all, even like a park name or a beach or a river, that's tough. Yeah, if they don't give you any information where their cleanup took place, maybe defaulting to your office is a good idea. If they have even a landmark, like I said, a park, a beach, you're welcome to just put that down. And what our team would do if you give the data to us is we would just go into Google Maps and find that park or that stream, that location in your province and drop the pin there, just use our best judgment. Or if you decide to enter the data, again, you can just do what I just described and just kind of use your best judgment as to where you thought that cleanup took place from those volunteers. All right, so I'm going to go back to the homepage now, and in the next 10 minutes, walk through how you can see reports on TIDES. This is a really important thing. We want to make sure that if you're entrusting us and encouraging your volunteers to use the CleanSwell app, especially, we want to make sure that you have access to that information after the fact. We know that many of our partners need these data at the end of their season. They want to gather all the information from their location. We use data all the time for grant reporting, for sponsors. You know, we know that we're in the same boat as you. So, and we pull the data for scientists and research purposes all the time. So this is probably the most vital side of the system, if you ask me. So I'm still logged in. I'm going to click on View Reports, and the map will reload. The page will look quite similar, but there are a few kind of key features that come up when you're in this side of the system. So we're going to let the map load here. Again, it's a little bogged down. You'll see there's a couple filters up here, and the cleanup date filter is the first one that I want to draw your attention to. The map defaults to loading data from the last year, the last 12 months, but you can change that. And I encourage you, if you're looking for data, maybe you know specifically the date or the year or the month, it's a good idea to narrow in on that right away, because the system operates a lot faster if you can narrow in, and then it doesn't have to load so many data points if it's from a year that you don't care about or that you don't need the data from. So you can drop down this menu and see all of these existing options. All of a year is just that calendar year. Past 12 months, past 30 days. And then there's this custom range down here too, which I tend to use quite frequently, because for the International Coastal Cleanup season, we're really pulling data from like August through the end of the year. So I'm going to do August 1st of this year through, what's today's date? The 9th, or it's the 9th for me, and hit apply. And so I've just defined that time frame window for myself. And the map again will reload to that time frame. Great. So these are now all the data from this 2022 season. I can zoom in. Let's see here. Zoom, zoom, zoom. I tend to scroll with my mouse for zooming in. That works best for me. I kind of wanted to find an example. Okay, this is good. I'm going to narrow in on central US for a second here to show an example. So all of these bubbles with the numbers, those are just indicating groups of data, cleanup data entries. When you zoom in, those will start to parse apart the further you zoom in. This kind of orangish red pin denotes a manually entered data card, like the system, the process that I just showed, or an entry that was bulk imported from that Excel file, that bulk import template that I talked about earlier. A purpley blue pin denotes an entry that was submitted through the CleanSwell app, through a user of the app. So that's just the difference there. And let me see here. Let's hop over again. I like to use this search bar up at the top. It helps me kind of hop to the spot in the globe that I'm most interested in. So I'm going to pick on our partners from Portugal because I know they have a good amount of data in the system. So what you'll see is you zoom in, the further you zoom in, information on the right side of the screen adjusts according to what you have on your map view. So if I scroll down here on the other side of the map, you always have global Earth entry options or report options. And if you click on any of these little plus signs, it opens up to a menu of the available reports. If you've been with the ICC for a while, if you've been, doing data collection with us, a lot of these reports look familiar to you. These are, some of the stats that we report on through the annual report that we create each year for the ICC, and a lot of the metrics that we create graphics for and whatnot. So I'm in Portugal again, I can do the same thing. You'll see these little lock symbols. They're unlocked because I'm logged in, right? So again, these are some of the more detailed data reports that if you didn't create an account and log in, they're going to be locked to you. So if I were to click on it when I wasn't logged in, a window just pops up that prompts you and asks you, hey, go ahead and make an account and log in, just so we can have an idea of, if we needed to go back into the developers and look at who was accessing the data, we'd be able to do that. The volunteers weight distance, this is a really nice kind of high level report. You'll see when I click on a report, I was in Portugal, it'll also note the date window that I have selected. So just be conscious of that. And any of these reports, let me click on, maybe I'll show a detailed summary report as well. This is, again, all the raw data. You've got all the information here. Here's that group name that we talked about earlier. And it's saying, hey, this only shows 100 results, but there are more than that. So what you'd want to do is download the whole report just to make sure you have everything. So if I click on the little cloud, it will download, and then you'll see down in the bottom of my screen, I've got that Excel file ready to go. And then you can manipulate or work with the data, run your own analyses on your own. Up at the top here, these zones and these states, they are just a reflection of administrative districts that Google Maps has. So our team doesn't really have a ton of control over what shows up here, but they can be helpful, I think, for some partners. And again, same report options, just on a different geographic level. All right, so here's a good example. I'm in Cascais. Let me zoom back up to show you the top of the screen. So we talked about the date filter. Another filter is that group name. We'll get to that in a minute. But what I also want to show, this is probably my favorite feature. If you're in your area and say you're here and you just want to capture the data from these couple of pins, maybe they're from the same cleanup, same stretch of beach, whatever it might be. But these zone and state reports, they're going to capture all of the data, right? It's like too much data. So you want to define your own area or your own cleanup event and just see a data report from those pins. That's where this little shape feature comes into play. And you can click on a little gray shape. Your mouse cursor will change, as you can see on my map here. And then all I have to do is just start clicking, and I create a shape, any size or shape you want. And I just make sure that I close it off. And what it did is it just lassoed all of those data from the area I've defined and then provided a report for me. So it's pretty cool. We love this feature because we know that many partners like to define their cleanups quite specifically. And it could just mean one cleanup is only 500 meters down the beach from another. And so you can define them and pull reports for each of them using this shape drawing tool. So I'm going to clear that polygon. That's again up in the top right. You can always redo the polygons. And we do have the question of, well, can I do like a polygon around like my whole country? Yes, you could. Just be aware that the more data you try to capture, like say if I try to capture like all of the data from the Mediterranean, the more data you try to capture, it might take a bit longer to load a report. So just keep that in mind. So there you go. It lassoed everything from the region just fine. So we'll clear that polygon. So again, really cool tool. Love that one. And then lastly, the group name is the last feature I want to show. This is where you can just type in, let's see if, I'm trying to think of a partner that uses this really well. Alliance. Yeah, so we've got a couple of different groups that have Alliance in their name, but you can kind of go in and search, okay, well, maybe I'm with this group. So I'm going through, all I did was type for that keyword, and then all these options came up that have that keyword in them. And when I select them, they go gray, and then I can select as many as I want and hit filter. And then you'll see it has reported that that filter is in place. And then I just have to look in the world where that group is located. So here we go, we're zooming in, and there's the entry from that group. So quick way to find the data you need. Our team uses this data filter for things like working with global partners. For instance, Bank of America is a global sponsor of the ICC. If I click filter there, it's really cool because their teams in any part of the world, they all know to use Bank of America or any part of the country, and then we can pull all of their data, even if it's on a global scale. It's just that group's information. What you'll see here, if you want to know how to grab this information, you can use the shape tool again, but sometimes applying filter on filter on filter can bog down the system. So what I would recommend doing is just pull the report for like the whole country or global that you need, and all it's going to do is pull those entries. So let me show an example. So like maybe I want to know the top 10 items collected just by the Bank of America employees. I'm going to click on that report, and it's going to take a little bit longer to load because what it's doing is pulling those data points from all the different spots and just creating that report for those entries. So now at the top, it's showing you still have this date filter, and this is showing the data just from these entries that are selected. So pretty cool there. That's that group name filter. As you saw, like it's not, like capitalization doesn't matter. I just typed in NTB. So this is that entry that I just showed you. Filter, where did we put that entry? There it is, I had it in Guyana. Okay, so here's the entry that I just had. What you'll see here, if you're logged in, you have the ability to zoom in, find your entry in the globe, and then edit that as well. If it's an entry that you created, you won't be able to edit other people's data, but you can always ask Ocean Conservancy to adjust anything if it looks off, or we get a lot of duplicate entries in the system from time to time. That's really easy for us to kind of go through and remove if needed. But yeah, so if I say I wanted to go in here and this was maybe an accidental entry, or I need to delete it altogether, I can do that here, or I can adjust any of the information. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to delete this card since it was a test anyway. And there we go. So now it's taken me to the screen of all the data that I've entered over the years. And I can go in and I can edit any of those data cards or delete them. And again, these are just the ones associated with my account. I'm actually just going to pull up my PowerPoint one last time and leave it on this slide of frequently asked questions, because I do find we get a lot of the same questions. So just for you to peruse, if these might be any of the questions that you have, again, I will share these slides with everyone in the network. And I think I cover a lot of the answers here, talking about historic data and how to have your organization recognized. That's a good one. Put your organization in the group name field when you're entering data. That's really helpful to know. We also, on the administrative side of TIDES, we can see a little bit more than you can. So that view that we were just in, that was just the average user view. But Ocean Conservancy team, we can see the email address of either the CleanSwell account that entered the data or the partner, the coordinator who might have manually entered the data. So we do frequently go into the system and we cull through and we make sure that we are removing fake entries, test entries, duplicates that might come up through the app. But if you see any of those in your area, I mean, you're the eyes and the ears on the ground and the expert of what actually took place in your area. So we always appreciate just a shout out of, hey, this looks off, or hey, I see some duplicates here from a CleanSwell app. entry, let us know and we will go in, and it's a really easy fix on our side to make those adjustments. And that kind of brings me to one other note that we had in the first webinar a couple of days ago. Somebody asked, well, we're at this site where there's just loads and loads of trash and it's just overwhelming and it's almost too much data to collect, or too much trash to even try to collect data. That's totally fine. What we recommend there is doing a subsampling of your site. Maybe just have a couple volunteers, maybe if a couple people are interested in the data collection, have them go out for maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes of a cleanup and just track items, or have them go with the team and have the team call out the items that are being removed. And then you're at least getting a snapshot and a little bit of a representation of the types of debris that are found in that location. Otherwise, yeah, besides the subsampling, just encouraging volunteers to try the data collection, even if it is just for like the first 30 minutes, that's helpful. Like those data are helpful. It doesn't have to be like an exhaustive list of every single item that you removed from the cleanup that day. Even the high level, like the weird finds, are good to report. Even if you just have people, weight, weird finds, and your location, like you're pretty good to go, and you can submit those data to us and have them count for the ICC. The final note that I will say, some folks ask, is there a deadline for getting your 2022 data in? Not really. We'll be doing entry for a few months still. We always say the sooner the better, while the information is still fresh in your mind or in your site captain's mind, just to get it entered, just so you don't have to worry about it, or you won't lose data cards, anything like that. So yeah, the earlier the better. We start pulling the final numbers for next year's report in about February or March. So by then we'll start knocking on your door. If we don't have any data from your area by like early March of 2023, that's when we start reaching out to partners and asking, hey, did your cleanup happen? Do you have any information that you want to share? Like, this is your last chance to have it count and have it be published in our report.